Hello everybody, this is Tim here again, this time with a commentary. Well, another commentary. Yeah, I'm finally going to get to the commentary for New Nightmare. If you guys want to sync up with it, I'm right at 0 right now, and we're going to count down from 3, 2, 1, press and play now. Yeah, I figured it was about time I got to this New Nightmare commentary. Truthfully, I'm almost done with the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. I'm on part 7. Really, after this, I only got, 2 more? Yeah, 2 more. Freddy vs. Jason and the Nightmare on Elm Street remake, which I'm not looking forward to much at all. Or at all, I guess. Because that's a pretty bad movie. But yeah, if you've been keeping track of my scores for the other Nightmare on Elm Street movies, pretty much I would say number 1 is a awesome flick. Number 2 is a good, social gay commentary movie, possession movie by itself, B-movie horror flick. But as a Nightmare on Elm Street movie, it's just kind of meh. It's kind of average. It would be like a 2.5 out of 4 as opposed to a 3 out of 4. A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 is a easy 4 out of 4. It is a good sequel. A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4 is not as good as Part 3. Part 3 is a great sequel. Part 4 is a good sequel, but it's a totally different type of movie. It's like a popcorn B-movie 80s flick, almost like an action flick by Renny Harlin, who did Die Hard 2. Dream Child, a lot of people don't like. I can still have a decent time with it with a 2.5 out of 4. It's just, I like some of the gothic visuals and stuff to it, and I like the Alice character played by Lisa Wilcox again with a good performance. And A Nightmare on Elm Street 6, Freddy's Dead, I think sucks. It still sucks. I tried to give the film a break when I did a commentary. I just could not enjoy the flick. It was so bad. And now we're up to part 7. Now, A Nightmare on Elm Street 7, or Wes Craven's New Nightmare, this is a very interesting one because Wes Craven had watched all the other films prior to this, and he just couldn't really figure out how to follow it. Which, at the same time, he probably could have did a follow-up sequel, but you can't. Craven didn't want to work in someone else's sandbox, basically, because this is his character. He only wants to go with the stuff that is more true to the spirit of his character, which is understandable because he created Freddy, and Freddy is his, regardless of who else has worked on the character. And so he wanted to do his own thing, which I get. He also had this idea way back during Nightmare 3 Dream Warriors, but the studio passed on it. That's understandable at the time. This movie came out in maybe the early 90s, I think, and people weren't really ready for it at the time, and it did flop, but it got really good reviews. And now it's become hugely respected and popular in the Nightmare franchise. It's usually most people's second or third favorite after 1 and 3, or 1 and this one and then 3. But yeah, this is a great opening. How you think it's like a traditional Freddy nightmare scene, but then it's actually a movie they're filming, and then it turns into a nightmare. It's like a dream fake out within a movie set, filming a film, and then another dream fake out. Movie within a dream within a dream. It's dream within a movie within a dream. That's pretty cool. Of course, the hand prop for Freddy's new glove comes to life and attacks everybody. I'm personally glad they did something new here and that Wes Craven was allowed to do something new here, because doing a direct sequel to Freddy's Dead wouldn't really have worked. The franchise was pretty much running to the ground with Freddy's Dead. I do think it might have made more money with a more comedic Freddy movie, because that's kind of what people have grown to want with the Freddy character even after Freddy's Dead, regardless of the fact that most people hate that one, including me, or at least don't like it. But yeah, I think a more comedic, more spectacular Freddy with the special effects sequences and everything of 3 through 5 and even 6 would have probably have done slightly better. This is a much more cerebral thinking film, which makes it a smarter movie. It's the highest concept of the series, definitely. But it's perfectly understandable why it didn't do well. If it was released now, this film would have done much better, because people would be much more, they would understand it much more. It would have done better now. I still think it would have done as well as the more spectacular special effects driven Freddy's, but I think it would have at least made maybe 30 million or something, at least for 30 or 40 million. This is Heather Langenkamp's best performance of the series. She's not amazing here, but she is great in terms of playing herself. And I know people will be like, "Oh, playing herself, well, that should be easy. She's just being herself." But it's not as easy as it sounds. It's not that truly that easy to just be yourself in a movie, especially a fictionalized version of yourself, of course. Miko Hughes in this as Heather's son. He does a great job in this. He does scream a little bit too much all throughout the movie. There's maybe one or two scream scenes that could have been cut down or cut, but overall, he does a great job. Of course, he was in the classic Pet Cemetery from, I believe, 1989. The guy who plays Heather's husband in this, he's also good. He's fine as like the proverbial nice guy. He's not anything mind blowing, but he does a good, fine job. There were real earthquakes going on at the time in Los Angeles, and so Craven decided to like incorporate that into the plot. Of course, the earthquakes are like to symbolize the Freddy creature or demon trying to escape into the real world and stuff. And I guess it causes earthquakes when it happens because it's like a mystical creature. But I like how true Craven stays to like Heather's real life. Like her husband is a special effects artist. I believe her first husband, I think, was a special effects artist. I think they're divorced now. I'm not sure if her new husband is a special effects artist as well, or since she divorced or got a divorce from the first guy. I'm not really sure. But Heather looks hot as hell in this movie. She's very fine here in this flick. This is the hottest she's ever looked in the movies, in my opinion. She's smoking here. But yeah. But this is a very well respected movie in terms of the franchise by at least 99% of the fan base. But there is like a 1% of fans who don't like this one because they just don't like the more cerebral direction and all that the film goes in, and that it's not just like more of a basic nightmare, and that Freddy isn't just like the traditional, more comedic, dark Freddy. He's more just straight up dark here with some more dark humor type lines, more similar to the first one. I mean, I guess it would be. Well, some fans don't like the fact that he's not more over the top and flashy like he was in the later films, and they're just not into the plot of Freddy like being in the real world and stuff. They just wanted something more traditional of him versus like teenagers again and all that. But you really couldn't do that at this time after Freddy's dead because that movie had just like pretty much crippled the franchise. You just could not repeat that. That movie beat the story into the friggin' ground. You just couldn't do that again. And yeah, there's like the 1% of people who don't like this one, and I'm not saying they're wrong for not liking it. If you don't like the film, that's fine. It's just a movie. It doesn't really mean anything if you don't like it. It's just art. And some people like art, certain art, and some people don't. But the 1% though that thinks that doesn't like the film usually say that this is like the worst in the franchise, which is weird to me. How anyone could think that this is worse than Freddy's Dead, I have no idea. Like I listen to the podcast Now Playing podcast and I listen to all kinds of movie podcasts and stuff just because I like hearing different points of view on movies. And on there, they just like trash this film, like they just couldn't even understand it or get it, or like they weren't even trying to get it. Like they didn't understand why Wes Craven had like allusions to Hansel and Gretel in here. It's obviously to be like a meta commentary on how horror has been around for centuries in different formats and different stories, and that horror movies are nothing new and horror stories aren't. So we shouldn't like try to suppress horror movies and stuff like that, or be offended by them and try to shut them down and all that. It's obviously the social commentary he was making, but they just kept talking about how silly it was that Hansel and Gretel was like a parallel to Freddy, the witch was in the New Nightmare movie here. But it makes perfect sense in terms of what Craven's going for. I truly don't understand why they didn't get it in their review. or at least it came off like they didn't get it. Maybe if you asked them, they would just say they just thought it was stupid, which I'm not sure why you would think it was stupid. It fits perfectly contextualized wise in this meta type of horror movie commentary movie that Craven's doing. This is not a traditional Freddy movie. This is more like a Scream movie, but with a supernatural bent, is what it really is. This is Craven's precursor to Scream. Um, he's watching of course, Miko Hughes is watching the original Nightmare on Elm Street on TV there, the scariest one, and that's cool. And of course, Heather's getting prank calls by a crazy caller who keeps saying 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you and all kinds of crazy crap. In the original draft of this movie, the babysitter was actually going to be the one doing the prank calls, and she was going to be controlled by Freddy, and she was going to be like Heather Langenkamp's obsessed stalker, and Freddy was going to have had took control of her body basically, and was manipulating her and using her to get at Heather even more in her life. But they took that out because they wanted to make Freddy himself more of the center of the movie. In the original draft, I believe the babysitter would chase Dylan across the freeway, and Freddy would actually show up and kill her because he was finished with using the babysitter character, and so he didn't need her anymore. I get why they took that out, because they wanted to keep the focus more on just Freddy himself. Like, why would Freddy need to use this person when he could just make the prank calls himself? Like, yeah, truthfully, that does make sense. Like, it doesn't really make sense why Freddy would need this babysitter character to do it. But honestly, if they had went that direction, I still think the movie would have worked. I don't think that would have destroyed the movie or anything. I still think it would have been fine. And it would have been interesting to see that version of the movie with the babysitter as a villain. Heather Langenkamp is great in these Freddy movies, and this is pretty much what she's known for. She's done some other work, but nothing has ever really caught on mainstream wise like she has with these movies, with these Freddy flicks, which is a shame because her, as an actor, she's not great, but she is good. She can deliver good performances. She's great in this film, and she was fine, good in Dream Warriors. In the first Nightmare on Elm Street, she was also good and solid in that. Part 3 is her weakest performance of the 3 movies, but she was still fine in that one. Mostly because the dynamic's a little off in that, where she's trying to play older than what she actually is. So you don't really feel it as much in that one, her character. But yeah, she's a serviceable, good actress. She could have done other work in other mainstream important roles that could have gotten her noticed. She's not on the level of acting wise of like Jamie Lee Curtis or anything, but she is like I said, a good, solid actor. She could have done other work, and I'm surprised she didn't do other work in other horror franchises. Like, I'm surprised. I'm surprised about that with a lot of actresses. Like, I'm surprised like the people who when New Line Cinema owns the Friday 13th movies. I'm surprised they never came to like Heather Langenkamp and asked her to play a role in a Jason movie where she could have went up against Jason too. That would have been really cool. I'm surprised that they've never done that before. And the same thing with Jamie Lee Curtis. Like, I'm surprised they've never tried to get Jamie Lee Curtis to do a Freddy movie to play a different character and stuff to do battle with Freddy. That would be really cool. Of course, the kid senses something is wrong. Children and animals normally can sense evil, at least in the movie world. We got that cut right there to the babysitter's face to make her look like suspect in the movie, that she might be guilty of something. See, right now in the movie, if you've seen this for the first time, you're not supposed to really know it's actually Freddy doing everything. So they're trying to give you some human suspects who may be the stalkers or maybe doing the prank calls and all that. You don't really know it's actually supernatural fully until maybe a little bit longer through the movie. This is much more of a thriller film than a slasher film, which also is probably why it didn't do as well in theaters at the time, because it's much more of a cerebral thriller, thinking man's thriller movie, meta commentary film about horror in general. which is really why it didn't do as well in terms of the Freddy box office. Of course, I like the limo driver talking about how they never should have killed off Freddy Krueger. That's pretty funny. This is probably one of the best sequences or scenes in the movie right here, with the talk show scene and Freddy as Robert Englund as the more over the top flamboyant Freddy from the sequels pops out from behind the wall or whatever, slashes his way out and starts talking to the audience and engaging with the audience and high fiving fans and stuff. Definitely, Craven is definitely playing into what the Freddy character had become. He's wanting to show that, but at the same time, though, you see Heather like looking on at Robert in the Freddy makeup, and you kind of get like this dark, eerie sense of how she's like kind of haunted by the Freddy character because of what's going on in her personal life right now with somebody impersonating Freddy, which actually turns out to be Freddy himself. Ever since this movie came out, there's been a few other movies post this flick that have tried to do this similar type meta thing again. Um, Craven tried this idea or a similar idea to this again in Scream 3, which I know a lot of people don't like Scream 3. I believe when I have a review of it up. Maybe when I reviewed it, I think I said it was just kind of all right, like a 2.5. Honestly, I think watching Scream 3 again, I think it is a good slasher film. It's not perfect, it's more convoluted, but I think Scream 3 is a good movie. It's the weakest of the series, but truthfully, I don't think there's any bad Scream movie now that I've rewatched the franchise again. My opinion on Scream 3 has Scream 2 has changed as well. I think for my review for Scream 2, I gave it like a 3 out of 4. I think watching Scream 2 now, it's probably my second favorite. Now I'd probably say Scream 1 is a masterpiece. Scream 2 is a great sequel. Scream 3 is a good sequel. Scream 4 is great. And in Scream 5, I think it's just good. Like, truthfully, what rewatching all the films, I think Scream 5 might be my least favorite. I don't hate it. I still think it's a good, solid movie, but I think it may be my least favorite just by a small margin against 3. Not by much, but by a small margin. Like, I'll be honest, I've never really got like the hate for Scream 3 about why it's so terrible and all that. The movie's truthfully not that bad, but I used to think it was just kind of mediocre though. But watching it now, my opinion on it has rose up a little bit. I think it's a good, solid, fine conclusion to what was a trilogy at the time. But yeah, I have no idea how like the small percent of fans who don't like this film could claim that this is like the worst in the franchise. Like this movie is, even if you don't like it, like easily, it is not the worst in the franchise. Even from a writing standpoint alone, this is not the worst Freddy Krueger movie. I mean, I can understand maybe being disappointed or not as into it because you wanted more of a traditional Freddy flick. But at the same time, if you're going to be fair with the movie, you have to judge it for what it is. Because to me, that's what a critic does. He's fair with every movie he watches and judges each movie for the movie. I mean, when people just like judge a movie based upon it's not giving them what they personally want to see, well, then you're not being fair with the movie. There's no point in you reviewing it. Of course, we get Bob Shaye here again in another Nightmare on Elm Street movie, except this time as himself. And I will say this about the movie. This movie it's connected to the Nightmare series, but also at the same time it's kind of disconnected. It's like a 50-50 thing. I consider this, even though it's part of the series, I don't consider this a sequel. I consider this a standalone Freddy Krueger movie that's somewhat connected to the other films. To me, this is a standalone film. But yeah, there was other films that tried to do the Freddy Krueger type thing or whatever, or do the new Nightmare type thing, where they tried to be meta. Like Scream 3 with Craven, he tried that again in that, or like a movie within a movie thing. Like, yeah, Scream 3 tried that, and then friggin' Seed of Chucky tried it as well, which that was a horrible version of that. And then there was one other one I'm trying. Oh, yeah, Blair Witch 2 also did something similar. Yeah, Bob Shaye as himself, his acting here is a little weak. He's okay. He's not amazing or good. I can let it go because he's not an actor, so it's fine. He's okay. It's fine. He's playing himself, so I can kind of let that go. I think Craven does a little bit of a better job acting wise though as himself than Bob Shaye does here. I will say this: there are some flaws in this film. Like I've said 1,000 times, or a million times, or however many. No movie is perfect. All films have flaws, and even if I'm praising a movie, I will still point out things that I don't like in a film. There are some problems here. Like right now, Heather Langenkamp is pointing out that Bob Shaye's obviously afraid to answer his phone because Freddy has obviously been calling Bob Shaye and everyone who's actually worked on the Nightmare on Elm Street films. He's kind of terrorizing them. That is kind of a flaw because I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of that from their point of view. Like I would have liked to have seen maybe Bob Shaye actually get scared or terrorized a little bit. It kind of you could have done something creepy with that, or maybe more of the main cast or whatever. Craven was too nervous to ask Johnny Depp to be in the movie because he was such a superstar at the time. But Johnny Depp later said he would have done it. That would have been cool to at least get a cameo by Johnny Depp, having like a Freddy Krueger nightmare or something, maybe on the set of some Tim Burton movie he's doing or whatever. That could have been cool. Or maybe even a cameo where he's like talking to Heather Langenkamp or whatever, asking her about her nightmares and all that. You know, it could have been like a callback to part one or something. Yeah, Miko Hughes is scary here. Like when he's acting like he's almost possessed by Freddy. That is one thing. The way Craven plays the Miko Hughes character is almost like you can't trust the kid. It's almost like Freddy might be trying to possess him in some way. So it does make it seem a little weird because it's almost like you can't trust him. But then by the end of the movie, you see that he's trying to help his mom and save her, and they defeat Freddy. So it is kind of a weird dynamic in the movie. That little type way that Craven executes it. I like seeing that Freddy has like slashed Dylan's dinosaur though, Rex. That's cool. It makes you think that in a dream world, of course, because it's a dream, Dylan could have like Rex as a huge protector and dinosaur or whatever that's trying to save him and all that and fight off Freddy. And apparently Rex has been doing pretty damn good battle wise. I mean, yeah, he has a battle wound where he's been slashed by Freddy, but they stitch him up and he's fine. So apparently Rex and Freddy have been duking it out a lot in terms of the dream world. And it does make you, part of you want like a Freddy versus a raptor or whatever Rex is in the dream world, or T Rex that Rex is in the dream world sequence. But at the same time, that would have been too over the top for this movie. So it's like better left to the imagination. One of the things interesting here that I've noticed in the movie is at the beginning of the flick, the Freddy glove, the new glove, is kind of like robotic. But then later on in the movie, it's kind of like a flesh-looking glove right here when it shows it. And then when it actually gets to the actual Freddy glove, when he's wearing it, it's kind of like a bone claw, like it's actually his hand. It's not even really a glove. It's like actually made into his hand, like the parts of the glove are. And the claws are like attached to his actual fingers. So it's almost like they may have had like 2 or 3 different designs for the thing in terms of the movie before they settled on what they went for. Or I guess right here where it's like a flesh glove or whatever is because they're fixing it up for Robert Englund or whatever to like connect to his real hand and go over it to make it, you know, work for the movie that they're filming or going to film. Whereas at the beginning it did look like a mechanical glove, so it does make me wonder why they went from like a robot looking glove, which actually could have been kind of cool if he would have actually, because they show him chopping off his hand at the beginning, if he would have actually replaced his hand with the robot glove, that could have been cool. Like seeing him use that metal hand glove, that could also have been pretty cool as a new glove in the movie. I do like the new Freddy look we eventually get here, and I like the new glove. Actually, I like the new glove better than the original glove. I think it's pretty cool how it's like made into his hand. The new Freddy look, I actually really like. It's something totally different. It's not really so much of a burned look that they were kind of going for in the other 6 films, but it's more of like a demonic demon type look, which I think works for this movie and this version of Freddy. Of course, the whole thing here with Heather reading Dylan Hansel and Gretel, that's to keep playing into the fact that horror stories are a good thing for people and for children and everybody else. They're harmless in terms of society. That real evil is much scarier, like the actual demon Freddy that's in this, who's a real evil entity. Because the horror story Hansel and Gretel is allows him to be calm and sleep at night, and he's not bothered by it because it's fictional. So he's able to have fun with it. And of course, in the end, the Hansel and Gretel horror story saves their life because that's what pretty much they decide to recreate to kill Freddy by burning him alive. Of course, here we come up where Heather's husband is about to be killed in his sleep. Which the interesting thing about this movie is when this movie goes more by the nightmare rules of the first movie, where Freddy could just kind of do anything in dreams, and there wasn't really any kind of rules set in stone yet for the franchise. Like Freddy kills Chase in Heather's husband in his dreams or whatever when he falls asleep, but he also gives Heather Langenkamp's character a nightmare about his death and him killing Chase in the dream world in his vehicle, which is interesting. Pretty much what you find out in the movie eventually by from Wes Craven is that this Freddy creature is trying to drive Heather Langenkamp insane by targeting all of her most vulnerable areas like her husband or her son. He's basically just trying to drive her out of her mind to make her a weaker or easier kill when he eventually has to take her out. Because in order for this being, this demon Freddy, to enter the real world and to live there and to turn basically the movies into reality, he has to kill the Heather character. She's representation of the Nancy character who fought Freddy and defeated him in the first movie. But yeah, at this point they're still teasing the Freddy character by showing his hand go into or glove with his gloved hand go into chase his body or whatever in his chest and kill him in the truck. At this point they're still kind of teasing the Freddy character and his new look and all that, which works for this film for what they're going for, which is a much more scary, subtle type film than the more flamboyant like sequels and everything. Like this movie is not really like a Freddy movie. Like the other movies kind of became like the Freddy show. This is truly New Nightmare. This is its own thing. This is New Nightmare. Part of me wonders if maybe they might have killed the husband maybe a little too early, but I suppose you did need like a big death at this point in the movie, and the only other like major character that was really close to Heather is her husband really. Of course, they're not going to kill the kid, so it has to be the husband. But at the same time, part of me wonders how it would have maybe have flowed if the husband would have stuck around a little longer, and we would have seen more of like him with Heather and all that, and his son, and him like trying to help Heather and stuff. Part of me wonders how that would have played, and maybe if you killed him later on in the movie, if Heather maybe, or if like maybe if you would have killed like the babysitter at this point and would have saved the husband for later. But yeah, this pretty much is a Scream movie, but with a supernatural bent instead of a real world just guy in a mask. Yeah, Heather Langenkamp does a great job in the film. This movie is, despite the fact that I like most of the Freddy movies to different degrees, and Part Four is one that I really enjoy because it's not a great movie, but it's a fun flick. This movie right here is easily better than 2, 4, 5, and 6, easily. Of course, the next commentary after this one will be Freddy vs. Jason, which I'm looking forward to because that is a fun movie. Of course, we got Robert Englund at the funeral. A couple other Nightmare franchise people cameos. Recognize Sarah Risher there, who works at New Line Cinema, and the guy who played Rod in Part One, whose name I forgot. Maybe it's like Jesus Garcia or something was the name he went by in the first one, or Nick Corey was the name he went by in the first one, I think. He was also in Candyman 3, I believe, or was it 2? I'm not quite sure. I think it was 3. Yeah, it was 3. Of course, you got Tuesday Night as well there, and Robert Englund as himself. Yeah, and Wes Craven. Freddy looks creepy as hell here. It's our first showing of him in his new look, at least some of it. That's an awesome nightmare dream sequence. Of course, Craven's idea for Freddy in this film is that this is like the real Freddy that exists in the real world. This is a standalone movie, but the Freddy himself here in this flick is kind of like a rebooted version of Freddy to fit more with the current time that this movie came out in the 90s, to like upgrade Freddy to be darker and more sinister and scarier. And it works. Robert Englund does a great job as the character. I don't know. This is not my favorite Nightmare movie. I don't think this film is as good as the original. It's about on par to equal to maybe slightly weaker than Part Three. They're about like neck and neck. This and three are for like the second to third best of the series. But yeah, 1, 3, and this one easily the best of the franchise. I don't really count Freddy vs. Jason because that's a two killer movie, so it's not a solo Freddy flick. So I think it's kind of not fair to count that one. Of course, we got Miko Hughes Dillon, who's like sleepwalking during the movie as his character, and he keeps sleepwalking and watching the original Nightmare on Elm Street, which is pretty damn cool and funny. Which I would say, even though this is probably the second scariest version of Freddy, I think the original is still the scariest version of Freddy. I think it's slightly scarier than this one. Like just Freddy himself, I think he's slightly scarier in this one. In the first one, I mean, than this one, but not by much. But yeah, I have fun doing these commentaries. I have fun doing videos for my channel. I've been a YouTuber for pretty decent amount of years now. It's been fun. I don't have like a truckload of subscribers, but that's fine. It's mostly because I don't play to like what's popular and all that. I do videos based off what I want to do, and for the audience that likes what I like, they will gravitate towards my videos. And for other people who don't care about horror movies or stuff like that and all that, or or who aren't big film lovers who like there's a lot of people who watch like film reviews or film videos and stuff who aren't really film fans who don't really know much about movies, which is fine, but they'll just watch videos because they find the person entertaining because they're doing like a shtick or a gimmick or something like what Jeremy Johns does, like, hey, it's more fun if you're drunk or whatever, or like Stuckman who says get Stuckmanized or whatever. Like, yeah, or even the Nostalgia Critic as well. They all have gimmicks. I get it. You have to come up with something in order to differentiate yourself from all the other reviewers out there so you can get people to notice your stuff. But me personally, I'd rather just be true to myself and not try to like do stuff just to kind of make money, which I'm not saying that's a bad thing because we all need money. Everybody does. There's nothing wrong with that outlook. And for me personally, when it comes to YouTube, it's just fun for me. I would rather do it just to have fun and to do and to say what I care about and to just be myself instead of trying to put on some kind of personality or something or whatever. Like the guy who does the dead meat kill counts, he's playing himself up as well for the audience, and it's understandable that when you do that and you play to what people want to see or what people will find interesting. If you have a gimmick or something that people care about or will latch onto, they will pay attention and they will come back and you will get a lot of subscribers. And that's cool. I'm glad those guys are able to make it. That's good for them. Whether I like their content or not, which that's a personal thing. There's some that are YouTubers I like, some I don't, well, same as everybody else. But that's just not who I am. I don't have any interest in really like making a bunch of money off YouTube or anything. I just like being true to myself on here and having fun with it. Of course, we got the playground sequence here coming up. But yeah, like I was saying, I'd rather be true to myself, and even if I had like 5 subscribers, as long as they were into the same stuff I was and liked my content because I was being true to who I am. Which, if you like my content, great. If you don't, that's also great. I mean, it's all personal opinion. I don't really care. But if you do, though, that's cool. And if you don't, that's also cool. But yeah, I would rather have just like 5 subscribers, even if those people were liked the same stuff I did and cared about the content that I do. But that's a whole other like tangent that I was going on there with the whole talking about YouTube. But yeah, back to the movie. Yeah, this is the playground sequence here. Great stuff. When Dylan climbs up on top of the thing or whatever and jumps, well, he falls off because he's trying to like actually reach God because Heather told him that in order to like talk to God or whatever, you got to like reach out and pray, and he interprets that as like actually reaching out to the sky to try to get in touch with God and stuff because he's a child. That's how he interprets it. And of course, he falls, and Heather gets the big dramatic catch. Here she is talking to John Saxon. I've heard some people complain, like to bring up the review I listened to from Now Playing Podcast, which is a podcast I mostly like, but at the same time, they have some like weird takes on movies that just kind of come out of nowhere to me. That's just my personal opinion, but yeah, they talk about how like John Saxon is here. Like, why would Heather talk to John Saxon? Why wouldn't she call up like a family member or something like that? Like, that is a valid point, but at the same time, do you as the audience really want to see Heather like like Wes Craven like bringing her cousin or something into the movie, or her grandmother or whatever, instead of like someone else from the Nightmare films like John Saxon. Like it would be more realistic if it was like an actual family member, but at the same time I don't think you need that. It's cooler that it's John Saxon in my opinion, and sometimes doing what's the most fun or the cooler way is the better way for a movie. Here's where Heather Langenkamp's character confesses that madness was like in her family, that she had a close relative that was in an institution or died in the institution. Because this movie does involve Heather's like real life so much, part of me wonders, is that actually true? Like, did Heather Langenkamp have some relative that died in the mental institution or something? I don't think it is, but it makes you wonder. At first, you might think Dylan is like trying to commit suicide or something here. This is a pretty epic fall. Of course, this was a stunt double, I believe. Well, yeah, it was a stunt double. They're not going to put the kid through that. Yeah, awesome sequence. Of course, here's where Heather gets more stalking letters in the mail. These kind of look like torn out Bible pages, but I think they might be like old newspaper clippings that have kind of like been burned up or something, or like burned with a lighter or singed or something, like made up to look like Bible clippings, or it could have just been like something the props department made up as Bible pages, or they could be real Bible pages. I don't know. Of course, they all spell out a message, which spoiler says answer the phone. I like that Robert England's like his character version of himself is like a kind of low key type dude, is like a painter and everything. Is pretty cool. Of course, another flaw in this film, and there's not many, but there are some. Another flaw in this movie is the fact that Robert England should have had a bigger part in this film. Like, this movie could have been much more epic um, than what it is, which is still kind of epic, but it would have been more epic if it was like if we actually saw Robert having a nightmare of Freddy himself. Instead, we kind of get the idea that he is having nightmares and he just kind of leaves the movie and runs away with his wife to just try to get the hell out of there or something, hoping to, like, I guess, get away from the nightmares or whatever and everything that's going on. But it would have been cooler if, like, if we saw a sequence where Robert did have a nightmare, which they had one scripted, where he was going to be in like a giant spider web and like a spider version of Freddy was going to come down or whatever towards him, and then Robert was going to wake up sweating or whatever, and that was going to be the reason he decides to leave town. That would have been cool if they would have kept that in the movie. That could have worked and would have been horrifying to see if they could have pulled it off special effects wise. But at the same time, it would have been cooler if Robert's part was bigger, and they eventually had him like team up with Heather Langenkamp to fight the Freddy creature. Now I know part of the reason probably why they didn't go that way is because Robert's of course playing himself and Freddy, and so it would be hard to get both them on the screen together. With that, it would be difficult, but I mean they could do it. You would have to use a lot of doubles and stuff like side by side and stuff and camera angles. I think Craven could do it, but that's probably the reason they didn't is because they probably thought it'd be too difficult or maybe too time consuming. But yeah, this painting looks great. But yeah, it would have been cool if he would have like teamed up with Heather towards the second half of the movie or something, and led into the climax, and then maybe even had Freddy kill Robert, which that would have been pretty funny actually. Or you could even have Freddy like merge with Robert and become one being. But I think the idea the movie's going with though is that this Freddy entity is like it is Freddy. It's itself. This is Freddy as a character by himself without needing Robert Englund. But towards the end of the movie, though, you do start to wonder: does like Robert Englund morph into Freddy because the creatures making the real world like the movie world? So would then Robert just turn into Freddy? Would they become one being? Because we see Heather Langenkamp become Nancy, and then John Saxon becomes her father, or Donald Thompson. So wouldn't does everybody who's been in any of the movies just transform into their characters? You know, would somewhere away from here Patricia Arquette transform into Kristen? You know. Or would it just go bigger and more people would turn into their characters if the Freddy creature had managed to kill Heather Langenkamp's Nancy that she turns into? If he would have killed her and entered the real world, would the real world have become like strictly like the film world? And would everybody have just transformed into their movie characters from the Elm Street movies? Would Los Angeles like then transform into Springwood? I mean, I don't know. I like this with the new Freddy glove like coming above her head, rising above, and you see the shadow on her. Good camera work. At this point, I will say this: maybe the movie is a tad overlong. It could be a little shorter, because at this point you're probably starting to wonder like what the hell's going on? Like what is this? Why? What is going on here? Like what is this? Why is this Freddy invading the real world? Like what's going on? Because you haven't really gotten many clues or anything as to what is the true plot yet at this point. So I feel like maybe they could have shaved off a little bit in the movie to make it run a little smoother. Like this is the Freddy movie that I can see even like non-Freddy fans enjoying. Like if you're a Freddy fan, like I was mentioning about the 1%, you may be a little divided on this one because it's not truly a Freddy movie. It's like its own thing that has the Freddy Krueger character in it. So like a meta horror flick. But if you're a fan of meta horror or just horror movies in general more than you are like a Freddy fan, I think you'll probably enjoy this one. Easily the second or third best in the franchise. Here's where we get the tongue gag again from the original movie. By this point in the movie, it's pretty clear that what's happening is supernatural, that it's not like a human being doing this, that this is something supernatural going on. And at this point, it's pretty clear that this movie is not really a slasher flick. This is a thriller, which is why it makes Freddy scarier because he's not on screen as much. I will say though, he probably could have used maybe a tad more screen time before the climax. Of course, we got the doctor pointing out, like, it can't be something really wrong with him. It must be the movies you're starring in. Have you showed him any of your horror films that you were in, Heather? Which, of course, Wes Craven based this female doctor on somebody at the MPAA who kept giving him problems all the time. Which, yeah, the whole, like, blame horror movies for stuff and all that. That doesn't go on as much now, where horror movies are really targeted for, like, people claiming they influence people to murder and stuff. That's not as bad now as it was in, like, the 90s. Now it's been replaced with, like, this whole SJW extremist liberal thing or whatever. And I'm not conservative or liberal, and I have nothing against whatever path someone wants to choose political wise. In my opinion, politics are all bullcrap. It's just the way to separate people into categories. Really, we should just do what's right, and that should just be it. We don't need to like put categories on everything and all that to separate people into groups, like conservative or liberal. But yeah, but we do have like these whole extremist thing nowadays, this SJW extremist thing, especially on Twitter, which is most of the people that are that are much more liberal leaning, but they're like extremist liberals. They're not really liberals. They're like jumping onto a fad. Most of them are like real, like whether you're liberal or conservative, either one, that doesn't make you a bad person or anything. There's good people on both sides, but then there's also extremists on both sides. But right now, in terms of film entertainment itself, we're really dealing with like the extremist liberal side, like the really far left who keeps claiming everything is like offensive to someone somewhere, so everything needs to be, or it's every random thing they think might be personally offensive to some other group that they're not even in, and they won't even let that group normally speak for themselves on whether they're personally offended. They just want it cut down, like they can't handle it. So it's really weird. And it's especially weird that film studios care so much about these people's opinions because they're like a minority of people on Twitter that most people do not take seriously. But for some reason, film studios really care. Like, they think Twitter is like the end all be all of like information highway, super highway or some shit or whatever. I don't know. It's weird that film studios care that much. I guess they're afraid if they don't pretend they care, which film studios only really care about money. But I guess they're afraid if they don't pretend they care, then they'll get badmouthed on Twitter. But if the mainstream audience likes a movie, they will go see it regardless, and it will make money. Believe me, a handful of SJWs, or even a couple thousand SJWs, or even a million SJWs on the internet, or on Twitter, are not gonna stop a movie from making money if the audience likes it. Of course, I like that they think Miko Hughes just took his pills, but he really hasn't, and he hides them under his bed because he doesn't want to go to sleep. But still, yeah, at this point, we don't know what the hell's going on in terms of the plot. At this point, with how weird Miko Hughes is acting, might think that the Freddy entity or whatever supernatural creature this is like trying to possess him or something. That would be my guess if I was watching this for the first time. This movie is also like a message for horror movies and stuff being not a bad thing in society, but a good thing. Because, of course, the idea behind this is that eventually when we get to it here in a minute with the Wes Craven speech sequence, is that horror movies keep our fears on the screen, so we're able to get them out in a safe environment in a movie because we know it's not real. The things that we're afraid of, we get them out by watching them through a movie. It's kind of like the audience lives through movies almost, because it enables them to get out emotions or circumstances and adventures and stuff and worlds that we'll never have in reality. So it enables them to just get those emotions out on screen in a safe way, in a safe environment. And then if you don't have that outlet, then it's much more, people's emotions and stuff would be much more dangerous and unhinged because they wouldn't have anything to have an outlet for. And that's pretty much what Craven's thinking is on the horror movie subject. And I would say that's probably right. I don't think he's wrong or was wrong. I think he's got the right idea or had the right idea. But yeah, I don't like how they just write Robert Englund out. They could have done more with him. Wes Craven has an amazing pool here, which I don't think this is his real house, but that is a great pool. I do like that Wes Craven is kind of like the guru, the dream guru or horror guru master or whatever in this movie, who has like the answers to all the mythology and the plot and everything, and finally explains what the hell is actually going on. In the original draft, he was going to be like have his own eyelids cut off, and he was going to be like driven around by Michael Berryman from The Hills Have Eyes, and he was going to like be took to Heather Langenkamp's house to explain to her what the hell is going on. That would have been way more creepy and extreme. I kind of wish they would have went with that. I mean, what they have here in the movie is a different representation of that, and it's fine and it works, but that would have been way more creepy and worked even more for like a horror movie world, like flick feel with what they're with what this movie is, which is a horror movie, of course. Like most people assume that the Freddy creature in this movie is like a demon, but Wes Craven never really specifies is it a demon or whatever. He just calls it like an entity that's existed for centuries or whatever, and it's been trapped in different formats and stuff in terms of stories because it's basically like an evil spirit. It's not really, it doesn't really have to be like a demon. You don't have to see it that way. I've called it a demon before too, like Demon Freddy or whatever, but really you could just see it as like an evil spirit that takes on a physical form. You don't really have to see it as a demon. It's almost like the old ones or whatever from H.P. Lovecraft mythology of where it's like a creature of like we don't know what the hell exactly it is. It kind of works here too. Like just the more you try to explain the supernatural, is kind of the goofier it becomes. So I like that it's kind of vague. Yeah, I think Craven's acting is actually better than Bob Shaye's. I think he's fine here. So basically, at this point, we realize that the Freddy spirit or whatever, the entity that has took on his form, took on the Freddy Krueger form, is a demonic creature that can be captured and held prisoner or whatever. And that's how you basically get rid of it. It's a magical entity. And it was captured in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise because the story for Nightmare on Elm Street was so good, it pretty much caught its essence, which is a little pretentious to say that I created this story that was so amazing that it captured this evil spirit in it. But at the same time, the Nightmare on Elm Street story is amazing. So you can probably, if I wrote it, I'd be tooting my own horn too. Of course, the Freddy spirit or entity or whatever is feeding Wes Craven nightmares that are actually visions of the future of what is going to happen. And that's what he's writing down is basically Heather's life. So basically, the creature wants to wear Heather down, terrorize her son as well, so it can make things harder for her, while actually terrorizing her at the same time. To just do all these things to just make her life miserable before he takes her out. It's just a way to play with her to make her more vulnerable. And like I said, Heather looks really fine in this movie. Here we have another earthquake, which is to symbolize the Freddy trying to come into the real world. And here comes our first big sequence of Freddy right here. First time we see him in all his glory, which is done really well. And there's Freddy. I would actually say this is my favorite look for Freddy. I've heard some people have a problem with it because they don't think he looks enough like a burn victim. Freddy has never looked like a burn victim in these movies. Never like a realistic burn victim. He has looked more like a he has looked closer to a burn victim though than in some of the movies than others. This is much closer to the makeup or similar to the makeup that was done in part 2 where Freddy's much more of a demonic demon type look. I'm fine with that. I have no problem with that. I think it suits this being like an upgraded version of Freddy. I like how Freddy calls her Nancy, which makes sense because that's all he sees her as the Nancy character. He doesn't see her as Heather. Here pretty soon we're going to have the babysitter death, which is probably the best death in the movie. I would say it is. Of course, here's where the doctor keeps accusing Heather of poisoning her son's mind with her dreaded horror movies she's been in. Which realistically, of course, she wouldn't think it was like Freddy Krueger himself doing this. But at the same time, the fact that she keeps jumping to blaming horror movies for everything shows that she's a very judgmental person. Got another nightmare sequence coming up here. Don't fall asleep, Heather. I will say this, seeing Heather play herself during the whole movie is maybe not quite as interesting as seeing her play another character like Nancy or whatever. I don't think it's quite as interesting. I don't like the whole Exorcist callback or whatever where Dylan like spits out the black bile or whatever. I don't think you really needed that. I love this right here though, with the doctor comes in and transforms into Freddy. That's great. But yeah, that's creepy when the doctor's like, cut this evil out of him and then transforms into Freddy Krueger. That is a great sequence. Very well done. This film is great, directed by Wes Craven. And once again, if you hear any kind of movement and stuff during this commentary, you've probably heard it in all my commentaries. That's just me turning and moving and having to adjust myself because sitting in the same seat for a while during like a 2 hour movie is not comfortable, even whether you like the movie or not. Of course, we got another callback to part one when Heather Langenkamp says, "Screw your past." It's a lot of cool like little callbacks to the first movie. Here's where we notice she's starting to become her Nancy character. Her hair's turning gray. Of course, here we have the nurses like tricking the Julie babysitter character by one of them acting like they're going to give the Dylan a shot to put him to sleep, while the other one does it secretly behind her back. So I'm not really sure nurses are able to do that. I mean, you could have like a hell of a malpractice lawsuit on your hands from doing that. But they want to really paint the doctors and nurses to look really bad here in this movie, which it pretty much works. But at the same time, though, it is a little far fetched that she would like risk getting a malpractice lawsuit just to put Dylan to sleep. I like that they're finally giving the babysitter like more to do here with her like taking up for Dylan and all that and trying to help him. Of course, even though I wish this movie would have done better in theaters, at the same time, if it would have been a big hit, New Line Cinema would have tried to milk it. We would have gotten like a New Nightmare 2, a New Nightmare 3, or whatever. Um, which I'm pretty sure Craven meant this as a one-off, but I'm sure if it would have done huge numbers, he probably most definitely would have come back and done at least one more sequel or two to round it out as a trilogy. Kind of like what he did was originally going to do with Scream with 3 movies before he did number 4. But yeah, it would have been interesting though to see what Craven would have done with a New Nightmare Part 2. At the same time, though, I think this movie works completely fine as a one-off. Of course, here's where we get Hey Dylan ever played Skin the Cat, which is a great line. At this point, the movie's about finished with its third act and is about reaching the climax. This film is a standalone, but the way Craven's got it designed, by design, it's almost like a companion piece film only and directly to the first film. It only barely references the sequels. It's really more of a straight up companion piece to the first movie. Almost like you could watch Nightmare 1 and then this one like back to back. Yeah, we're getting near the third act. She's called up John Saxon again. Heather does a great job as like a concerned mother trying to protect her son in this movie. I like the shot of like Freddy forming in the clouds. It's pretty cool. This whole freeway sequence is really good, really tense. He's like messing with Dylan and holding him like in front of vehicles and then lifting him up in front of them. At this point, though, you kind of start to wonder, though, why isn't he just killing Dylan? Like, why doesn't he just kill him? He doesn't really need him anymore since Heather knows what's going on pretty much. And I guess maybe he needs him to like lure Heather to him. But if he would have killed the kid, I'm sure she still would have went after him. And Dylan has made it home. Here's where we get another one of the best sequences in the movie, or scenes, I mean, where they all start to become their movie characters, and John Saxon transforms into her Lieutenant Thompson character, where he's wearing the same outfit from the original Nightmare, and of course she transforms into Nancy. Yeah, this movie's a huge breath of fresh air after Freddy's dead. One of the other basis for this movie is that New Line Cinema basically has, by the time we get to Freddy's Dead, they have like watered down the franchise so much that it's killed the series off, and that's what's given this evil the ability to escape from the movies into reality. Because basically, Craven has taken a shot at the studio for destroying their own franchise, which they kind of deserve that shot because, in a way, they did because they did water Freddy down so much. Call homage to Nosferatu right there with the shadow of Freddy. Awesome score in this movie. Probably either my favorite or second favorite Nightmare on Elm Street score after part one. I think one, this one, and four all have great scores. And now we're heading into the climax of the movie. I do wish they had changed the inside of the house to look like the old Elm Street house from the first movie instead of just like the outside of the house. I think that probably would have been cooler. I like that the kid leaves the sleeping pills as like a trail of breadcrumbs, like he learned from Hansel and Gretel. That's cool. I like that the kid in this movie like helps out in the climax with his mom. I'm watching this film almost towards dark now. It's 8:24 here where I'm at. Which I believe this is the longest Nightmare film. I'm pretty sure it is. I like that Freddy like sliced up the Rex toy. I guess in a way because he was pissed off at it for protecting Dylan in the dream world. Which of course, sorry, which of course Rex can be fixed after all this is over. So we haven't seen the last of Rex. I mean, obviously movie wise he would be okay in this world because she would just stitch him right back up again. All I gotta do is put the stuffing back in him. I will say this: she takes maybe one too many sleeping pills. Like she took that many, she would probably almost like OD on them. I like the Freddy lair in this. It's not like the boiler room or like any of the more elaborate dream worlds of the other ones. It's more of like a old school, like a Roman, Greek, like ancient demon place or whatever influenced. It fits this movie, this whole Colosseum type look and everything. She's hunting for Freddy. This is the showdown. I like how she finds the movie script and starts reading it. Which, of course, if you read further down before the screen cuts off, um, you can see like read things that are going to happen in the movie that haven't happened yet. Like you can read that she's going to twist around and Dylan is going to be behind her. Yeah, this is not really a Nightmare on Elm Street movie. It is New Nightmare. It's its own thing, and I think for what it is, it does a great job at doing what it sets out to do. Another great Robert Englund Freddy performance, of course. I love Robert Englund's lines in this as Freddy, where he's like, "Come here, my little piggy. I got some gingerbread for you." That is funny. Although that line is a little goofy, It is a little bit more for the humorous, more over the top, flamboyant Freddy's of the other films. It is a little weak though that this Freddy was like stabbed in the leg by Dylan and he's limping. Like this Freddy can't heal himself in the dream world like the regular Freddy can. In my opinion, that makes him a little weaker. I don't really like that. Yeah, at this point, it's clear that Craven made this film as like a companion movie to the first one, with the liquid stairs or whatever coming back here. Yeah, it's obvious that he made this as like a callback to the first movie or a companion movie to the first flick. I mean, that special effects though, when his mouth like closed, that looks a little dated. They have like a python there scaring Dylan, which it's making like hissing sounds, which I'm pretty sure pythons don't hiss like that. But at the same time, who cares? It's a movie. Of course, Freddy's tongue has been split and it kind of looks like a snake, gives him that more of a demonic look. I like the fact that he actually transforms and we see the true face of the evil spirit Freddy or demon Freddy. Freddy is killed a little weak here because this is much more of a physical being Freddy than the other ones, which are more dream world based. Like this one can actually be damaged in a dream world and killed. Um, but I will say I like that it's a callback to the Hansel and Gretel like killing of the witch because that's to tie into the whole theme of this movie or one of the themes of this movie about how horror stories have been around since the dawn of time, and they may evolve and become new. And Freddy is just another symbol of the horror villain that's been in folklore and movies and stuff for centuries. Like he's just another version of the witch from Hansel and Gretel. It's the same thing, is what Craven's basically getting at. So on that level, it does work for me. Of course, here we have the movie script has come out of the dream world with Heather, and Wes Craven actually like signed the end of the script to tell her thanks for playing Nancy again one last time or whatever to kill the demon, pretty much. I like that she's using the horror script that is basically her life of just what happened to like read Dylan some of it to calm him down and everything about after everything that's happened or whatever. Just show how horror stories are beneficial to society and how they can make people feel better and stuff. I like that. It works for the context of this particular meta movie. And like it helps him helps Dylan deal with everything that's happened. Yeah, that's New Nightmare. Honestly, watching it again this time for this commentary, I'd still stand by my review. It would be a 4 out of 4, but yeah, I think it's my second favorite. I think it's about as good as the first movie, just in a different way. To me, this is an awesome movie. It's a totally different movie than the first flick or any of the other flicks. It's going for its own thing. This is a meta movie precursor film to Scream, basically. For what it is, it's more of a thriller. I think it's an awesome movie though for what it is, but you have to kind of separate it from the Nightmare series or at least from the traditional Nightmare series, from what they're doing in those movies, to judge it for the film it is, because it is New Nightmare. It's going for something totally different here, from meta like commentary on horror and stuff like that in general. Um, but yeah, for what it is, it's an awesome movie. Easily, in my opinion, the second best Nightmare on Elm Street movie out of the entire series. Uh, just to give my thoughts on the other films, again, number one I think is an awesome flick, 4 out of 4. Number two I think is a good to pretty good solo B movie horror flick, gay social commentary movie. But as a Nightmare on Elm Street sequel to the first one, it's only 2.5. It's all right. Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, another 4 out of 4. It is a great sequel. It does get a little weak towards the end. I don't think it's as tightly written as number one, but it is still a great sequel. I would like to see a little bit more from some of the Dream Powers and stuff, and it still has the best cast of the franchise. Number four is more of a B movie popcorn flick. I would give it a 3 out of 4. It is a good fun time. Number four is a little bit weaker script writing in some areas than part three. It's a little bit of a come down from part three, but it's still a good, solid, fun movie. Number five, a lot of people don't like, but I'm a little generous to it. I think it's a decent gothic like horror themed movie for the special effects. Basically, it's not a great movie or even a good one by any means. I'm probably being a little courteous to the movie because I am a Freddy fan, but if you're a fan, you're always probably going to be a little bit more courteous towards those particular movies or that you're a fan of. But yeah, for me it's a decent time. I'd give it a 2.5 out of 4. Number six, Freddy's Dead, goes for much more of a Looney Tunes thing, but the tone is not balanced because you have nightmares where like Freddy's like making a child relive their molestation or whatever, so it doesn't really fit. And then by the end, everything is like Freddy's demise is just a repeat of part one and is treated as like a huge joke. For me, that's like a 1.5 star film out of 4. It sucks, easily the worst of the series. This one again, a 4 out of 4. I think this is an awesome meta horror flick. And then next up is Freddy vs. Jason. So I'll see you guys again with the next commentary.